Hello. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea. How's everybody doing out there? End of the work week at the Island Free Library, Saturday, 3 o'clock. We're closing up shop. We're done. We did a lot this week. Wow, we got our blind date with a book program. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, but we wrap books in brown paper and they become a blind date with a book. And so we did a real big theme of that for Valentine's Day, and we distributed them around town this week, all the way till just an hour ago. We did our last batch out into the public. So that was fun. That's fun. So if you see them around town, that's definitely an Island Free Library program, and it was a fun one. So get yourself a Valentine. Take a chance on a book. Take a chance. Have a blind date with a book. See how it goes. But that's not what this program is. This program is Frankenstein Tea, a daily short story program for adult listeners. I read adult language, adult themes, adult topics. This is an adult program. This is not story time with Miss Morgan, our youth services librarian. This is Frankenstein Tea for adults. There's my dad. Hi, Dad. My dad is taking a time out from his chores of, supervising some work being done at his home there, and he's going to listen to a story. You got everybody listening to the story, Dad? Are the workers listening to the story? That'd be kind of funny. I'm having tea. I'm still hooked on my lemon tea. It's hot though. I just made it. And it's gray. Gray in Rhode Island, everybody. Gray in Rhode Island. But maybe you love gray. Maybe gray's like your thing. You're like, oh, it's so gray. Tea for all. Excellent, Dad. Maybe you're like, ooh, gray. I just love it. I actually was on a walk the other day, and it was a beautiful walk, and there's snow on the trail, and in the distance with the snow and the gray, and the shingles are gray, and there's snow on roofs, and the water was, when the sky is gray, the ocean is gray, So it looked like I was looking at something in black and white. It was kind of this wild moment where like there was nothing else but gray and white. And so it looked like a black and white photo is what I was looking at. It was pretty wild. And then when I stepped back, there was a little bit of brown, a little bit of like a grass that was brown. So then it had a little bit of color, but just that lean forward and that distant view of snow being white, and then the houses, and it was dusk, right? I walk after work, and so it was like 5:30. I think it's 5:30 I was walking, because it's later a little bit longer. So 5:30, dusky, gray and white. It was like a black and white photo. It was a wild moment. There's a sip I can take. Okay. So we've been celebrating Black History Month with this program, and we're going to continue that through the end of the month, through February, and then the staff and I have started to think about, like, how can we continue that further beyond February, and maybe not have daily shout outs, but weekly, something pretty regularly, which we have done on this program. I'm proud to say that we have done a really good job of diversifying what we read together on this program. So we're going to continue that. We're going to continue that on a larger scale with other library programming. But for this month, we're celebrating Black History Month with a Black author every day. This author is Kathleen Collins. someone I did not know. So I'll read you her little bio here from the back flap. Kathleen Collins was a pioneer African-American playwright, filmmaker, civil rights activist, film editor, and educator. Her film, Losing Ground, is one of the first features made by a Black woman in America and is an extremely rare narrative portrayal of a Black female intellectual. Collins died in 1988 at the age of 46. I'm going to be reading from Whatever Happened to Interracial Love, Stories by Kathleen Collins, with a foreword by Elizabeth Alexander. This was published by HarperCollins. There's a few publication dates. Whatever Happened to Interracial Love was 2016. HarperCollins. A few other publication dates when the individual stories were published and out there, but this book is 2016. I liked a few things from it today. I'll probably read from it a few times over the next few weeks. For today, by Kathleen Collins, I'm going to read Only Once. Only once. He had to slide down the tunnel with enough poise left over to execute a faultless jump, or he would have found himself on the third rail. He looked at her. Think I can make it? He grinned, like he could open and close life, with his laughing eyes, poised, and his golden body, poised. She didn't want to watch, not this time, nor any of the other times. Once, they were walking across the Brooklyn Bridge when all of a sudden he started climbing up the boulders. The next thing she knew, he was walking along the top. Then she heard herself say to herself, "It's none of your business. Keep walking." And she did. And she did. "It's a gas from up here, baby," he yelled. "Even if I fall, it's a fucking gas." Only once do you know that kind of man, they say. Only once. He was leaning against a pole at a dance, smoking a Lucky Strike, and they started talking. He thought she was funny looking. "You know, you look ridiculous at a dance," he said. "Whatever gave you the idea you belonged at a dance?" He took her by the arm and they went across to the park. "Think you can jump that rock?" He grinned. She just looked at him. "Come on, I'll catch you if it looks like you're jumping wrong." She climbed to the top, jumped. He watched her and let her fall. She landed okay, though her ankle felt a little sore. "That was beautiful," he grinned. "You could have smashed your ankle to bits." She felt incredibly proud. "Let's find another one. I'll catch you if it looks like you're jumping wrong," he said, and hugged her. Only once do you know that kind of man, they say. Only once. He rode home with her to New Jersey, and she took him into the backyard to look at her father's roses, to look at her childhood, to look at what pricked and stung and was difficult to forgive. He looked at the house and the yard and her family, and it seemed to her that everything changed, was forgiven. The second time he'd caught her, a fraction of a second before she smashed her ankle. "You almost didn't make it. You jumped wrong." He grinned, pleased as hell at the split-second way he'd caught her. Pleased as hell. "Jesus Christ, it's so fucking sweet," he shouted. And when she turned, she could hardly see him for the wisteria, the thin lilac petals crisscrossing his face. "Jesus Christ, what an incredible smell," she shouted, while the perfume slipped under his pores, astounding him, causing a violence to shake him. Jesus Christ, he shouted, ecstatic with pleasure. Think I can make it? He grinned, like he could open and close life, with his laughing eyes, poised, and his golden body, poised. Only once do you know that kind of man, they say. Only once. When she went away, he wrote her letters. Thick envelopes would come in the mail, one word to a page. Do you know how much I love you? A single rose when they met at the bus stop, and a shit-eating grin on his golden face. Only once, they say. Only once. They sneaked past his landlady and up to his attic room. It was almost morning. He opened her wide, and the dawn came in. She bled like a puppy. Sunlight dazzled them awake. A thick, warm grin cuddled her cheek. Once in the snow on an old fur coat. Once in the woods on a bed of pines. Once in a barn on a pile of hay. Once. Only once. Now he sits in an armchair with a lamp beside him, and she watches him out of the corner of her eye while she chatters away with his folks. Now he catches her with a smile that confuses her and makes her trip over her word to meet his eyes. Think I can make it? He grinned, like he could open and close life, bend and twist it. Now they are in a liquor store on the Bowery. They will buy a giant bottle of Chianti with a long ostrich neck with which they will walk home to 135th Street, drinking huge, awkward gulps as they go along, turning cartwheels and somersaults and landing lopsided in the street, giggling. They will be so drunk when they get home that they will collide together on the floor and everything will blur. Then thin secrets will trickle out about how once he was surprised by life, deeply surprised, when his golden skin turned black and called forth contempt, when the laughter in his eyes died. Later, she will try to pinpoint the exact secret reaching her in the fog. Later, she will try to pinpoint when laughter died. Later, she will try to pinpoint who threw the insult and when, and where it landed, and why it stuck to his skin. But she will not be able to. It will thin out by morning, dilute to a tiny scab that will not fall off. Think I can make it? He grinned, like he could open and close life, with his laughing eyes, poised, and his golden body, poised. He didn't clear the rail, or maybe he did. Maybe it was later. He mistimed a dive from a high cliff, or maybe he didn't. Maybe it was even later than that. He shot himself in the head, thought the gun was empty. Or maybe he knew it wasn't. Only once do you know that kind of man, they say, only once. But she would know them all her life, one after the other. They would turn out to be that kind of man. That was Kathleen Collins. Whatever Happened to Interracial Love is the name of the book. That short story was called Only Once. I'll read you one more today. The uncle. I had an uncle who cried himself to sleep. Yes, it's quite a true story, and it ended badly. That is to say, one night he cried himself to death. He was close to 40, a former athlete of Olympic stature. In my father's house, there are still gold trophies received while he was in England for the Olympics of some year. He was quite handsome, Negro, but a real double for Marlon Brando. A story runs through my family that one day on a street in Philadelphia, my uncle and Marlon Brando passed each other and stopped, each stunned by the resemblance. He was quite fair, anyway, a light brown, but with the same brooding Brando-esque face, the pouty jowl around the cheeks and mouth, the disappointed eyes, moody and restless. He was my favorite uncle. It is difficult to separate this story from the slight props of race necessary to bolster it up. I have said he was Negro, a track star of some standing, a double for Marlon Brando. He had, too, an exquisite wife of such mixed breeding that her skin was the palest white imaginable, hair black and silky, her features keen. As children, my sister and I idolized them. To have such a stunning aunt and uncle. And they loved us too. We spent many summers in the small southern New Jersey town where they lived, in the house that once belonged to my grandmother and now belonged to them. They were always quite broke. I remember once my sister and I turned over the last of our pennies to pay the electric bill, while a worker stood in their doorway, ready to cut it off. But that only added to their magic in our eyes. To be broke, but still so handsome and beautiful, lazy and generous. For my uncle could no longer run because of the severe asthma attacks that had just begun. And already he had the habit of reclining for days at a time on the living room couch and never moving. And my aunt never worked. It seems that I can recall stretches of days when my sister and I would wake up, go into their bedroom, and the four of us would lie there for hours, laughing and hearing stories. My aunt loved to talk about sex. Without her, I still might not know its place in the full scheme of procreation. And my uncle loved to order huge submarine sandwiches, hot chocolate, powdered donuts, and ice cream from the luncheonette around the corner and lie in bed eating and talking. When I take the hollowed filter away from those snug summer days, I see now that already he had lost the will to struggle with life, and that my aunt was a lazy, spoiled woman who thought her fair, almost white skin would save her. I lost touch with my family early, went abroad for several years, came back married, and began a family of my own. But my father's letters told of my uncle's slow disintegration, his off-again, on-again jobs as a track coach at various colleges and recreation centers, his long paralytic bouts of depression when he took to his bed for weeks at a time and cried day and night. I saw him only once during those years, at my parents' summer house, where I came to spend a few weeks after the birth of my first child. He came in the front door as I was coming down the steps. He looked the same to me, except the brooding Brando looks had deepened. The sad pout now creased his forehead and beneath his eyes and made his mouth droop a little more. But I was fascinated by this deepening, perhaps because I was still young enough to be attracted to sorrow. Then a strange thing happened. In the middle of the night, he woke me up, shook me awake with his violent crying and sobbing, and begged me to come downstairs and talk with him. I did. We sat up the rest of the night, and he cried with only slight coherent moments in between, when he would mumble about my aunt, how she had turned out to be stupid, lazy, no real help to him, how he had never amounted to anything, never been able to count on anyone, how he could cry, give in to his crying, allow it full possession of his being, as if his life were a vast well of tears, and one must cry to be at the center of it. My father came down, awakened by us, angry and furious at his brother for putting me through such an ordeal. I never saw him again, but I was having dinner with my parents when the phone call came that told of his death. My father was badly shaken. It was the first of his 7 brothers and sisters to die. Yet he was the baby, the last born, the one whom all the others had loved and pampered and spoiled the most. I offered to drive down with my father to his house. On the way, my father filled me in on the last years of his life, the years when he never left the bed. How night after night he kept everyone awake, for somehow in those years he had managed to produce 3 now almost grown children. With his laments, his great heart-rending sobbing that went on hour after relentless hour until the morning, when he would fall asleep and sleep the day away, only to awaken again at night and begin this vigilant lamentation. His children had grown up inside his sorrow. His brothers and sisters would come time and time again and try to coax him back into life, stand at the bottom of the steps and beg him to come as far as the living room, bring succulent meals and plead with him to come down and share them, promise to find him work as the head track coach at some prestigious university. But he kept to his bed, his mournful, inverted existence, cried in his pillow until death took him away. My aunt opened the door. With the years, she'd kept all her beauty except around the eyes, the washed out eyes of a woman who has put up with too much. The house was much as I remembered it. The living room couch where I would watch him stretch out with his huge submarine sandwiches and powdered donuts. The dining room, which now held only near white women, older variations of my aunt sitting together, sipping sherry and whispering. I went upstairs to his bedroom. The wide, old-fashioned bed where he'd lived dominated the room, stood there like a monument to his perverse pursuit of humiliation and sorrow. It was surely perverse, surely bound to the color of his skin and its bastard possibilities. But his weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth brimmed potent to overflowing in the room, and I began to weep for him, weep tears of pride and joy that he should have soaked his life in sorrow and gone back to some ancient ritual beyond the blunt humiliation of his skin, with its bound and sealed possibilities. So refused to overcome his sorrow as some affliction to be transcended, some stumbling block put in his way for the sake of trial and endurance. So refused to strike out against it, go down in a blaze of responsibilities met and struggled with. No. He utterly honored his sorrow, gave into it with such deep and boundless weeping that it seemed, as I stood there, he was the bravest man I had ever known. Two today from Kathleen Collins. The title of this short story collection, Whatever Happened to Interracial Love, with a foreword by Elizabeth Alexander, published by HarperCollins. Thanks so much for coming. Enjoy your tea. Enjoy your afternoon. It's cold out there, but I think I'm going to try to get outside before I go home. I'm going to try. I got my orange hat with me. Even though there's no hunting on Block Island on the weekends, I still wear an orange hat. I don't always trust them. All right, everybody. Peace. Love you. Bye, Dad. Miss you. Love you. See everybody soon. Be good. Stay warm. Eat right. Sleep right. Wear your mask. Get signed up for your vaccinations. I know my dad's is coming. Woohoo! And my mom got hers today. Yee! We're getting there, everybody. Hang tough. Be well.